Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. South Africa's manufacturing sector remains under pressure owing to weak domestic and international economic conditions. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss the outlook. Terence, welcome to Second Take. The manufacturing sector performed below expectations in September, and the immediate outlook is also a bit fragile.
Yes, as you said in your intro, the domestic and the international conditions are weak. So the real economy is not pumping, and the manufacturers are taking a lot of strain as a result. And we saw in September there was an expectation of a slight increase in activity and output during that month, and actually it declined both year on year and month on month. And for the quarter it was only marginally up, so sort of below expectations. And then we also saw the Kagiso PMI, the Purchasing Managing Index, coming out, and it was below 50 points, which is the key level. Actually fell deeper below the 50-point level, which sort of is an indication it's the separation between contraction in the sector and further expansion in the sector, and that fell again to around 46 points. So we can see overall there's it's not a good space that the manufacturers are in, and it's not a place where they're going to get out of too soon either.
There's also concern about the impact that the recent strike activity could have on the manufacturers in the months ahead.
Yes, the South African manufacturing sector is quite strongly tied, and its fortunes are tied to the resources sector in South Africa. It's a historical fact that South Africa was built on this mining legacy, and the industrial base, I think a lot of it was developed around mining and the resources sector. And you know, it has diversified since, and there are a number of manufacturers that aren't necessarily directly linked to mining, but it's still a major game in town, and one that the mining sector, if it's growing, the manufacturing sector does better than when it's in contraction. So what we've seen is these protracted, unprotected strikes that started in August, and they've continued all the way through September, October, and the last ones were starting to peter out this week in the platinum sector. And that's had a major impact on production, especially in the gold and platinum sectors. And it therefore is going to have a major impact on those people that supply inputs into the mines. So those mines that weren't operating weren't going to be consuming a lot of the inputs that they use to do the mining operations. And then of course, you know, there's a lot of stress, especially in the platinum sector, and there's discussion around curtailing or deferring capital investment. Now again, the manufacturing sector would be there to supply into those capital projects, and if they are cut or deferred, that's going to have an impact, and that is a lag effect. So the manufacturing sector fell in September, along with quite a big pullback in the mining sector of over 8% month on month and year on year. Big pullback because of the strike activity. That's going to continue into the October period. But you know, for the manufacturing sector, this lag, this fallout could continue for a longer period, because orders flow, you know, for capital projects over longer months and sometimes even years, rather than just quarter by quarter. So there is a concern that the direct impact, and we saw the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan saying the direct impact's about 10 billion rand from the platinum and gold strikes, and the indirect impact on exports, he was saying, was around 12.5, because it impacts the manufacturing sector. But you know, the impact on those people that supply into the sector, should these projects be cut, and should production remain below, you know, normal levels, is going to be significant.
All of this bad news comes amid a growing clamour for reindustrialisation. Are there any positive signs on the horizon?
As you say, it's a growing clamour for reindustrialisation. We've got the big industrial action plan, we've got the new growth path, we've got the national development plan, all of which say we need to reindustrialise, we need to build our manufacturing base. And basically there seems to be an inverse relationship between the words and what's actually happening. So we're seeing a continual decline in a sector that was once well over 20% of GDP, closer to 30% levels. Now it's around 15%. And we see a sector that used to employ far more people, now around still substantial, over 1.7 million people, but you know, nothing like it should be. And there's a view that we need to see manufacturing and the factory floor as a place where we can employ a lot of South Africans. So there does seem to be this inverse relationship at the moment. And are there any highlights on the horizon? Well, I think Africa, sub-Saharan Africa's growth, and the fact that it's growing at plus 5%, in some cases at plus 6%, and you know, only South Africa is really dragging down the figures for the continent and for the region. That has to be, given our proximity, that has to be a sweet spot for manufacturers. Whether they're fully aligned to that opportunity and whether the infrastructure and the border position is fully aligned to that position, and whether we're able to beat off Chinese competition and Southeast Asian competition, European competition and American competition, who are all now looking at this market with greedy eyes, is going to be interesting to see. But we are here, we're in close proximity, and we have had experience of trade, and especially trade in manufactured products into many of these economies. But many of these economies, like us, are going to demand localization, and it's going to be interesting to see whether our manufacturers are going to be able to adjust to that demand. Similarly, the other two, highlights, but at the moment it's more of a drag because people are saying, where is it? But the infrastructure program in South Africa has potential for the manufacturing sector. We see particularly in the transport and logistics space, if we have these 7,200 metro coaches coming in from PRASA, if we have the 1,000-something new locomotives coming in for Transnet, that's quite a lot of industrial activity that can take place around the sort of locomotive industry. Then, of course, there's the Eskom programs, which are multi-decade. And then, of course, we've got the renewable energy projects, which at the moment, all of these are fairly import-intensive. And we can see that in our trade figures and our trade balances at the moment. But there is an effort to localize. So I think the positives, and they are more longer term, the immediate future doesn't look great for manufacturers. But if you are planning for to stay in business and in manufacturing for some time, you have to say the positives are the infrastructure program and then, of course, Africa.
Terence, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.